very few people notice this. Breakpoint is a world where the main plot is secondary, and the game itself pretends it's a story about Skell, wolves, and drones. But if you dig even a little deeper, you realize it's actually about the island. An island that was already used, long before you arrived. And honestly, at first I didn't care much about the main storyline at all. I was simply curious about what happened to my team. Because almost immediately we learned that Midas 100% did not die in the helicopter crash. He was taken for experiments. We discover this through clues and intel left behind by Midas himself, where the code names of two projects keep popping up, DEUS and CLAW. And here's the thing, human experimentation is not new to Auroa. Yes. I'm talking about all those DARPA-era bunkers and underground military complexes from the Cold War. All those laboratories that appeared on Auroa long before SkellTech ever existed. An island that, judging by everything, was not chosen by accident. Times that did not pass through the world without leaving scars, and apparently never really ended. Once you realize that Auroa is older than Skell, and far dirtier, the picture changes. Project DEUS. A project that wasn't a villainous master plan at the start. Its creators genuinely believed they were building a system for protection and survival in a world they saw as unstable. But isolation, autonomy, technocracy, all of that costs money. And who knows what happens when you take an ancient resort island packed with underground military bases from the DARPA era and add funding from shadow companies on top of everything else, right? You get a potential center of power capable of imposing its atomic will on the outside world. And this is where the plot finally starts to smell like real Tom Clancy.
Nomad, Wonderland, it's still gonna happen.
As the story unfolds through intel, we learn about another secret project, CLAW. And this is where the puzzle starts to click, and it's genuinely interesting. CLAW is a project that has official funding through government channels. That's why the CIA and the Department of Defense are aware of CLAW and the kidnappings of specialists. That's why Fisher and Nomad are brought in. Sending Nomad was useful for those who wanted the blame pinned on Skell. It mirrors the investigation from Wildlands DLC Operation Oracle, where Skell products were blamed for ending up in the hands of corrupt regimes. Peter Miles and Senator Lomax were politically involved. They manipulated the president so the mission would unfold exactly as needed. And it was Nomad who gathered the evidence that pointed to Skell, after which Skell was pushed out of his own cradle and replaced by Walker. By the way, Walker, interesting name. He's essentially the same as Nomad, just the American version. And there's an interesting detail here. Nomad and Walker are similar in many ways, but at one crucial point, their paths diverge. Just a moment where they chose different roads. And that divergence explains a lot. If you're interested in more of this kind of content, not just lore, but deeper, author-driven analysis, I do have some additional material on my Patreon. No obligation at all. If you simply want to support me or the channel, the link is in the description. Now let's get back to the main topic. Because by this point, the puzzle should already be coming together. What Project DEUS really was, and how it eventually mutated into Project CLAW. And it becomes clear that Nomad and Walker didn't end up on that island in the same boat by accident. Nomad had already dealt with Skell before. He had experience with high-tech threats. He knew too much. His ghost reputation and his ability to operate autonomously made him a double threat to Project CLAW. That's why he was sent, not just to kill and frame, or well, the opposite, but to test how the project performs against a real, top-tier operator. And at the same time, to create official proof for politicians and shadow players that Skell was guilty. So what actually are Auroa, DEUS, and who's behind the evil happening there? By the end of the game, we learn who stands behind both DEUS and CLAW. Walker represents a tired, cynical view of a system that's rotten from the inside, similar to Deimos from Rainbow Six. He understands that catching one scientist with a bomb is pointless if the system itself will just release him later. Walker acts as a realist who wants to affect the world somehow, fully aware that ideals don't exist. The strategist is far more interesting. He's not just, I am the future.
I am Batman!
Here's the core of it. He sees the island as a tool, For him, Auroa is not territory. It's a prototype of an autonomous world where power, control, data, and technology can be tested. For the strategist, this is a game with reality itself. He sees the world as a chessboard where people aren't players, but variables in the system. And this is where the line needs to be drawn. Auroa is not mysticism. It's not lost, not annihilation, and not the island chooses. If we start saying that Auroa calls, waits, or rejects its masters, somewhere in Tom Clancy's eye starts twitching nervously. Because the spiral here is not around the island. The spiral is around DEUS. It feels strange, dangerous, almost alive. Not because it holds a mystery, but because people once again built a system they don't fully understand. Bunkers, protocols, autonomy, isolation, surveillance, control. All of this existed here long before Skell. And that's exactly why, after the collapse of CLAW, the island doesn't become free. It gets taken over by Bodarks, as a logical continuation of the same idea. If a working autonomous prototype of control exists, someone will try to take it from you. Because the idea of armed autonomous security is a utopia that always ends with weapons. And that's the most uncomfortable truth of Breakpoint. We didn't save Auroa. We proved that DEUS works, which means Auroa is just a perfectly equipped, autonomous, self-defending space. In the right hands, a paradise on Earth. In the wrong ones, a weapon straight out of a post-apocalyptic movie.